Hello. I see we have Shadow Mist on. Hi, Shadow Mist. How are you doing today? So we're going to run for about 25 to 30 minutes here on the live stream today. Super chat's active. So if you want to go ahead and do a super chat and then I'll answer your questions and we'll take it from there. So really the purpose of the stream today is to talk about, we've got this lockdown situation which is affecting the economy, and lots of people are asking me, well, what's going to happen to the private jet industry and business aviation once this situation clears and we're all allowed to travel freely again? What's going to happen? Are there going to be an increase in travel, private jets? Are there going to be more airplanes on the market? These are all questions that people have been asking me. So I thought I'd do a live stream and answer your questions directly and see where this conversation goes. So I see we've got 7 people on at the moment. Okay, so I guess I'll kick off. So where's this going to go? Well, what we're noticing right now is that a lot of people that were going to buy a private jet, most of them are sitting on the fence right now, mainly monitoring where their business is going. Do you usually think there will be a similar bounce like after 9/11? Yeah, exactly. Now, if we look at what happened just after 9/11, because of the terrorist attacks, wealthy people and companies were afraid of sending their people out of the airline. So they thought, well, we'll get into private jets. In fact, Warren Buffett invested in NetJets. NetJets ordered 420 aircraft just after that. And as a result of their marketing and everything, it really did open the market. And more people started to travel by private jet. More people moved into private jet ownership. And we saw a good growth in the market from 2002 all the way up to about 2007, just before the crash in 2008. There was a lot of growth happening in the private jet market. Then, of course, we had the crash in 2008. The market took a while to recover. And then now we've had another crash. This time it's an economic crash worldwide, mainly affecting the airlines on the aviation side. Lots of airlines now have grounded their airplanes. They've laid off a lot of crew and engineers and lots of other people. And lots of aircraft for sale right now on the airline front. Lots of airlines have gone bust or about to go bust. So we're experiencing this situation on the airline front, and it's also crept into the charter front on the private jet front. So those companies that do private jet charter have been affected because their airplanes are on the ground. There aren't that many charters happening simply because in many parts of the world, you can't travel there because they're in lockdown, or you can't have meetings. So people have now moved online and they're doing meetings via Zoom, but you can only do so much on a Zoom call. You then at some point you need to actually meet in person and travel and inspect things and whatnot. So things have kind of slowed down, but a lot of people are sitting at home, and what a lot of people don't know is they think, well, all billionaires have their own jet. No, they don't. About half the billionaires don't own their own jet. So I think a lot of these, and think I know because some of them have been on the phone to me, that basically they've now jumped off the fence. They say, well, you know what? I've got $4 billion. It's time for me to buy a jet because I don't really want to travel with other people because of this virus and whatnot. And there could be other viruses in the future. So a lot of people are thinking that way now. And also, with the private jet flexibility that it gives you, you can go in and out when you want, where you want. A lot of airlines right now that are still flying are only flying on certain routes. So there are certain places where you can't even get there by air. You have to go in somewhere else and maybe drive 6 hours by car. So it's got a lot worse. But if you have a private jet, you can still move around to certain places. I mean, there are restrictions in certain parts of the world, but if you do have your own jet, and you can go. I mean, right now, for example, an American can travel to the UK on their private jet, but a UK citizen can't travel to America unless they've got a crew visa or some special permit to be able to do that, because there's a lockdown on travel between the US and the UK at the moment. Hopefully that will be lifted in the next couple of weeks, and then we can resume normal operations. But that's what's happening. That's the way I see it at the moment. Anybody else out there with some questions for us here? So far, Shadow Mist. Okay, we've got Philip. Hi, Philip. How are you doing? How's Switzerland going? Hi, Fab. For sure, there's going to be more people who want to travel without the crowd. Yeah. Isn't the opportunity of a free European legislation regarding business aviation to look more like the US one? Well, the problem with Europe, and I don't want to get political or anything, but Europe is very, very into regulation, and the European Union love creating more regulation. And unfortunately, regulation scares the entrepreneur. And so I don't think the European market is, the economy in general, is going to be looking very good in the next 5 to 10 years, unless this whole European Union thing collapses and we go back to having independent countries doing their own independent agreements. I think if we move in that direction, then there is hope for Europe. But if you keep going down the route of the European Union and all this regulation, it's going to be problems not only for the private jet industry, but for every industry, because regulation kills entrepreneurship. And so that's the problem. I mean, I see the American market recovering. There's quite a few countries down in South America which are opening up and changing the way they do business. Of course, we've got Africa and the infrastructure down there. And then we've got all the Far East. And when I say Far East, everybody immediately thinks China and Japan. But there's other countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines. They are very interesting economies that aren't very much talked about. But there's some interesting stuff happening there. And I don't know if you've seen the video I did about Vietnam. The Vietnamese economy is a very interesting one. They're very into technology. They've got a very young population. There's going to be some interesting things coming out of Vietnam on the technology front, and that technology is going to be creating a lot of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years. So that's certainly a place where someone wants to do business. I certainly see the private jet market in Vietnam growing, because there aren't many people out there right now with private jets, but there will be in the future. I hope I answered your question, Philip. Okay, Shadow Mist. A380 was already on the chopping block. Yep. I wonder if it's gone on the days of squeezing. Yeah. Well, I didn't like the A380 in the beginning. I mean, when they first announced it, and they were talking about 600 people on an airplane, I'm thinking, we need to go 200-seater supersonic, faster. And I'll be covering the subject of speed next week in an interview I'm going to be doing with two interesting ladies that have written an interesting book about energy. I don't want to disclose too much about it because I want to leave that for next week. But speed is the way I think we should have gone, because that's the way all the rest of technology has gone, computers and that. So I've not been a fan of the A380 from day one. I think Emirates saved the game there for Airbus, because they ordered so many airplanes. But, Emirates, they don't really pay much for their fuel. And so that's why they could afford to operate these gas guzzling engines. So anyway, Steve. Hi, Steve. Steve, if the commercial aviation is hit as hard as is expected, with many airlines going bust, with infrastructure necessary for business aviation negatively affected. No, not really. I mean, a lot of private jets operate in and out of smaller airports. So, the infrastructure is a bit different, and the airports are there already anyway. And some countries are already building new airports. I think the problem with airports for the future is the technology aspect of it. I mean, building 4,000-meter runways, which is going to take you 10 years to do, people need to think of what's technology going to look like in 10 years' time? How are we going to be flying in 10 years' time? Because I'm not sure if we're going to be flying the same way we do now. I think a lot of airplanes will be flying and landing and taking off vertically. I think we're going to see a lot of that in the future, which does not require 4,000-meter runway. Hi, Bob. Bob's here with us. Bob's got a great company. We use his company for security. Some jet owners may well not be able to afford a private jet if their businesses have been battered. That is very true. In fact, some of those people are selling their jets right now. Yes, I do see opportunities right now. Yeah, there are. I've seen the market where airplanes that were valued at 25 million in January, you can now pick up for 22, 23 million. So I think there's been a flex of 10 to 20% in certain cases on certain airplanes. Again, it depends on the circumstance of the person selling. So yes, there are opportunities out there now to buy a private jet for less than what it was worth a few months ago. And that is definitely an opportunity. And there's two sides of the market right now. There's those making a lot of money in this crisis and made time to buy a jet. And there's those that have been greatly affected by this economy and that's disrupted and may shut their business down. And so the jet is one of the first things that goes. Aaron Thompson's saying, I have lots of land. Is there any restrictions to building my own runway? Okay, to fly my Icon A5. Well, again, that will depend where you live. Each country is different. If you live in the United States, it will depend also on the state you live. If it's Canada, the province, you have to speak to your local people and ask them if you're allowed to build a runway, and if so, how you can go about it. So that's definitely one. John Travolta and Kenneth Copeland did it. Yeah, they do. They have their own runway. And not only, there's lots of other people that have their own runways. Steve's asking, Lugano has already been affected with a commercial operation, is looking increasingly unviable. Yeah, well, I know about Lugano. I know what's going on there. I used to fly out there myself on a Falcon 900 for a very wealthy family. And my buddies are still there flying a couple of airplanes that fly in and out there. And I was talking to somebody the other day about Lugano. There was rumor the airport was going to shut down, but it's not going to shut down. It's going to be bought by an agglomeration of entrepreneurs in the area, and they're going to do something interesting with the airport. And the airport's going to be developed, probably focused on private aviation. So they won't be shutting that airport down. Okay. Yep. Steve's giving a thumbs up. Okie doke. Anybody else with questions? Here we go. Hi, Robert. I agree on the 380 was a big mistake and supersonic should have been developed. Yeah, there's quite a few supersonic projects on the go at the moment. You can check on the future of aviation. There's a whole playlist here on BizJet TV which talks about where things are going. It's a subject that really fascinates me, and will be the subject of video coming up next week, talking about energy and that and the future of aviation and aerospace. So yeah, there's the question always is, why have airplanes been that slow? And Concorde was retired over 15 years ago, and we still haven't brought another supersonic aircraft onto the market. When all the military guys have been flying around supersonic all the time. So, and I happened to be at Charles de Gaulle Airport that morning when the crash happened. I took off from the same runway about an hour and a half before Concorde did. I was flying a Dornier 328 jet at the time. And then I got back to Bergamo, where I was flying from, and I heard about the accident. But it wasn't Concorde's fault. It was the airport's fault. There was debris on the runway. And then they shut the whole Concorde project down, which was sad, really. Very, very sad. So Bob Morrison's asking, can't believe there are another Robert Morrison's on this call. Yeah, 17 participants. Yeah, there you go. Steve Podmore's asking if there are any role you could have in this industry right now, what would it be? For any investment opportunity you would focus on, capital allowing? Yeah, well, you've probably heard me say, maybe I shouldn't say this on a live call. Maybe this is more for a private conversation, but I'll just touch on it. And then if you want to do a call with me, just ping me an email. And Steve, we have spoken in the past, and I can lay it out more in detail. But certainly right now, as there are going to be more people looking at buying private jets, there are also going to be people that will need a jet available 24/7, but haven't quite got the money to buy one. So leasing may be a good option right now, because I see a market for that. And of course, you've got to select the right aircraft, but I've spotted a few opportunities right now. So Steve, if you want to give me a call, let's touch base a bit later and we can discuss it. Philip Meyer saying, time for one pilot operation, time for one engine operations in Europe. Yeah, one engine operation is already happening. I mean, there's a number of charter companies that operate the Pilatus PC-12, which is an excellent airplane, single engine turboprop. You've also got the Vision Jet now from Cirrus, which has got one engine. And there's a couple of other projects out there with one engine jets. So yes, I definitely see that there's a market for that. But again, as far as Europe's concerned, I'm not very hopeful on Europe for the reasons I said before. Thomas says fuel prices should be very low. They are. And it's a great time to fly because it's so cheap. So if you've got a private jet, now's the time to fly because it's so cheap. And, fuel's gone down, right down. And it used to be 45% of the cost of operating your airplane was fuel. now it's a fraction of that. Can we ask now COVID questions? Non-COVID questions. Okay. What do you think of 3-engine business jets in modern times? Well, 3 engines, 2 engines, 1 engine, as long as the engine or engines are efficient, I think that's the main one. I think, Elon Musk is talking about flying people from anywhere to anywhere in the world on a rocket. A rocket can have 1 engine depending on what type of rocket it is. But yeah, I mean, I would say 3 engines are good, especially for certain routes where ETOPS rules apply. You can fly direct with 3 engines, while if you've got 2 engines, you can only fly certain routes. So that obviously is going to save you time. So, there are people that prefer the 3 engines, and that's why they buy themselves a Falcon 7 or 8X, because they just feel more comfortable crossing an ocean with 3 engines instead of 2. But, those aircraft that do have 2 engines, they're very efficient. If we look at the Boeing 777, which is a great success for Boeing, which has in a way succeeded the 747, the 2 engines on the 777 are very efficient, very, very efficient engines. So I think efficiency in the technology is the key. I don't think we need to get bogged down in how many engines this thing has. Sometimes a lot of engines can be a negative. Sometimes it can be a positive. Again, a lot depends on the situation and your circumstance, which is why on YouTube, I can give general information. And if we need to get specific, I need to speak to you directly and find out, what your circumstance is. And that's so important. It's so important because everybody's business is different. And it's important for me as an aviation advisor to be able to understand what your business is all about. And for some people, 3 engines is the way to go. But for others, it's 2 engines. So again, that is a question that really depends on who's asking. The answer will be different. Okay. Any other questions? So, okay, I'll be wrapping up in about 5 minutes. So if any of you got going to do a super chat or going to ask another question, whatever you want to do. It certainly is an interesting time. Let's put it this way. I don't think any of us thinking about, towards the end of the year, you always think of your goals for the next year. I don't think any of us thought that this year, this situation of lockdown was going to happen and the way it would affect the economy. Will you have an Orville website? It won't be an Orville website. It will be a different website. And there is a reason why I don't have a website. And it's very simple. I wanted to see how things ran with LinkedIn and with YouTube without having a website. I get probably 4 or 5 people a day contact me because they realize I don't have a website and asking me if I need someone to design a website for me. And it's been a bit of an experiment. And I must say, websites are really necessary these days. I mean, this is a much better way of communicating. A lot of people contact me on WhatsApp or on LinkedIn. And not many people these days are using websites. And once I do have a website, it will probably be 1 page or 2 pages, and that's it. And then the rest, you come onto BizJet TV, contact me on WhatsApp or LinkedIn. There's a lot more you can do on LinkedIn. You can write articles, you can share your expertise. Here on BizJet TV, you can do the same thing. Websites, I think a website is a bit a thing of that was okay 10 years ago. Today, things have evolved, and video is the big thing. Video is really the big thing. And if you're watching and you haven't started to do videos for your business, it's a great way to communicate with everybody. Okay, Steve, he's saying, could you talk about your experiences on YouTube? I'm impressed with what you. Well, my experience on YouTube. Well, I'll tell you why I started the channel. Now, I started the channel because every time someone contacted me when I had a website, and I used to have a company with a business partner, which I decided to leave a couple of years ago, and I took BizJet TV with me. But the channel started because people were asking me the same questions. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll just shoot 10 videos and answer the questions on videos and put them on YouTube. So when someone contacts me, the first thing I do is send them the link to the videos. and then say, when you finish watching the videos, let me know and we'll schedule a call. So that way I would save my time and their time instead of explaining the same things over and over again. So that's how I started the channel. So I didn't start it to market myself and my services. It was just for the clients to be informed. And so then what happened is people started to call me that I didn't know. And they said, oh, I've been watching you on YouTube. I thought, oh, and I started to see the views going up. And I thought, wait a minute, this maybe could be a means of bringing in new clients. So, the experience I've had, I mean, okay, 10,600 subscribers isn't much. There are not many people. But what you've got to bear in mind, there are only about 22,000 private jets in the world, which equates to about 18,000 owners. So, I'm aiming for people that are looking to buy a private jet, or that have a private jet, needs to change their private jet. And the whole purpose of the channel is to educate. I think it's really, really important for people to understand what they're doing. I mean, buying and operating an airplane is not an easy thing. This is a piece of metal that goes into the sky up at 45,000 feet, and it needs to be safe. The whole acquisition needs to be approached in a certain way. So what I've done here with the channel with over 250 videos is I'm educating the market. And I think this is really, really important today, is to educate. And that's what my focus is. And then I know there's people on this chat right now and people that watch the channel that just watch because they're enthusiastic about aviation, like airplanes. And that's fine. That's fine. I mean, if a young person is watching this today and they feel inspired to get into the business of aviation, and I've inspired them, great. We've got another person in the aviation game, which is great, because it's a very interesting business to be in. Now, what else we got here? Any chance for new pilots entering market? I don't think so. I think right now, I mean, before there was a pilot shortage, I think a lot of these airlines that have gone bust, and also airlines that have, reduced their flying, they're not going to open all their routes right away, because I don't think people are going to be jumping on airplanes as soon as lockdown finishes. I think a lot of people now have been going on and using Zoom and, communicating with technology. And people are going to be afraid of moving around because they could catch a virus, or they could suddenly be locked down when they're away from their families, and now they're stuck. I mean, Bob Morrison, who's on the chat with us, was telling me the other week about people stuck in Tenerife, can't get back to the UK, and chucked out their hotels, now having to rent an apartment in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands. And so people have got this on their minds and they're worried. So I don't think the airline industry is going to pick up like that straight after the lockdown. So as far as pilots are concerned, if you're in flight school right now, next 5 years are going to be tough to get a job, unfortunately. That's the reality. What will be the first electric biz plane in operation? That's a good question. And I've been watching a number of them. And there are about 50 different projects of the electrical vertical takeoff and landing right now around the world, from New Zealand to ex-Yugoslavia, Germany, UK, US, Canada, all over. And I don't think there's a market for all 50 of these companies. I think there's probably a market for 10. Who are those 10 going to be? Will depend on speed. Whoever gets the market first, whoever gets their aircraft certified first, is going to start to capture market. And I think, one of the key things is going to be social media and sharing how these airplanes work. And so if any of you watching have got one of those companies, you need to start thinking about filming the development of your project, because it will attract investors and it will attract clients. So I think that's important. So again, when? Probably next 2 to 3 years. And that's why I see in the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of changes in the aviation space in how we fly. Is owning a private jet cheaper in the US than in the UK? Yes, it is. And it always has been. Which is why, for example, I did most of my flight training in the United States. Started in 1986 in my private pilot's license. And then I went back in 91, 92, got my commercial pilot's license, and then completed my training in the UK and in Italy. But the reason why I did the bulk of my hours in America was because it was cheaper, and it still is cheaper. It's different flying in the States than it is in Europe. So I think you need to train in both locations. But if you have your own aircraft and you're operating throughout the United States, it's a lot cheaper. It always has been, because America has always been very business friendly and always open to aviation as a business tool. I mean, they were talking about no plane, no gain 25 years ago. This is something that's just been started to talk about in other parts of the world. So the Americans have understood that the airplane is a business tool. And so they've created an environment which is a lot more business friendly. Who else we got here? Gregory Allen. Hi, Gregory. You think there will be an increase in domestic business against international? Yes. Yes, there is already. I mean, people are basically looking at the situation now where maybe they were having their products made in China and they're thinking, look, what's happened? I can't make my products right now. Let's see if I can get them done locally. Also, bear in mind 3D printing. That's coming. It's going to become more mainstream. Bear in mind technology. I mean, where President Trump talks about, we need to bring the jobs back to America. Things need to be made in America. Let's bring the factories back to America. Okay, great. By all means, I mean, he's for the American people. But what he hasn't taken into consideration is that a lot of these jobs are going to be done by robots or by AI. So, yes, the reason why people went to China in the first place is because it was cheap labor. Well, now, if the labor is done by a robot, of course, the cost of electricity is going to come into play. But, that's where that goes. Shadow Message asked me, do you still pilot? Yes, my licenses are active. And I was due to go for a type rating, but then COVID-19 happened. But I will be shortly coming back into the air, and we'll be filming in the air and fly along. And so you'll see that coming in the next 6 months. Do you think operating costs for jets will be lower because of oil? Of course. As I said before, oil is usually about 45%. What used to be 45% of the cost of operating an aircraft, now it's gone right down. So yes, it's a lot cheaper to fly these days. Hopefully the price of oil will stay low, or we'll end up with a technology where oil is not required. But more about that next week. You've got to watch this interview. It's going to be interesting. So Steve asks, there seems to be a lot of overlap between super yachts and business jet owners. Yes, there are. Carrot yacht bonus for sales. Now, yeah, that's an interesting one, because I have attempted to go down that route, and other people in the yacht business have approached me. The only way we found we can do this is by doing events together. So there's a gentleman in London, for example, and he organizes dinners, and he brings certain people in for the dinner. So you sponsor the dinner. So you go half with the yacht guy. I pay half, he pays half. I bring in 5 guests. He brings in 5 guests. This other guy brings in 10, 15 guests. We have dinner together, and it's a bit of an event. That's really the only way you can do that, because people come to me for aircraft, and I can't turn around and say, excuse me, would you like to buy a yacht? And the yacht guy can't turn around and say, excuse me, would you like to buy a plane? It doesn't really work that way. You build up rapport with these people. These people are very busy people, and they come to you, or they come to me because of my aviation expertise. And they'll go to the yacht guy because of his yacht expertise. And, the person coming to me for the aviation expertise will have a yacht person already, chances are. So it's difficult to send people clients because of that. We've tried. The only way we've found it works is by doing the events together. But even the events, it's difficult to get everybody together at the same time and that. So it's not an easy one. As I always say, the clients need to come to me. I've tried knocking on people's doors. It doesn't work. These people are very busy. They need to come to me, and they come through word of mouth, or they find me on here or on LinkedIn, or that's how it works. They're very busy people. They need to come to you. It's as simple as that. Okay. We've almost been running for half an hour. So I'm going to wrap up now. I'm going to thank you all for being on here, and I'll see you all next week. When we come up with these other things. Oh, Philip's saying, what about hydrogen planes? Part of the future business. Yeah, hydrogen is an alternative fuel, and not only hydrogen. We'll be talking about the hidden energy next week, and I'll just show you. This is the book, and we're going to be talking about this book. I'm going to have the 2 authors on next week. And they'll be sharing some really interesting information on where things are going. And I'm bringing them on because of the oil prices that have gone down. And so I thought it was a good opportunity now, with the oil prices so low, to talk about other propulsion systems that are currently being developed. So we'll have an interesting conversation with these two ladies. They are ladies, so it's going to be interesting. Two ladies talking about technology. So that's all from me. I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you all stay safe wherever you are. And that's all from Fabrizio Poli on BizJet TV. Thank you, everybody, and see you again soon.